Welcome to the Cheating Wife Stories channel. The late autumn sun cast long shadows through Damien Ford's home office window as he sat at his desk, reviewing client specifications for a new security system implementation. His headphones rested comfortably on his ears, a habit from his corporate surveillance days, even though no music played through them. Working from home on Wednesdays had become his cherished routine, a perk of his senior position at CyberShield Innovations. The house sat quiet, save for the gentle hum of his computer and the occasional notification ping from his dual monitors. Family photos lined his desk: Lucas's Little League victory, their fishing trip to Crystal Lake, and Elena beaming at their 10th anniversary party last year. Damien glanced at his watch. 2:45 p.m. Lucas would be home from middle school soon. The distant sound of a car door closing caught his attention. Through his window, he spotted Elena's white Mercedes pulling into the driveway. Unusual. She typically worked late at Horizon Realty on Wednesdays, often closing deals with clients who couldn't meet during regular hours. The front door opened and closed, followed by the familiar sound of Lucas's backpack hitting the kitchen counter, a habit Damien had tried unsuccessfully to break. "Hey, sweetie." Elena's voice carried through the partially open office door. "How was school today?" "Pretty good. Got an A on my science project. The one about renewable energy." "That's wonderful. Your Uncle Raphael will be so proud when I tell him. He's always asking about your grades, you know." Damien's fingers paused over his keyboard. Something in Elena's tone, honed by his years of security consulting, prickled his awareness. He reached for his phone and opened the recording app, a habit from his corporate days that had served him well. "Mom," Lucas's voice dropped lower, hesitant. "Uncle Raphael called me again yesterday. On my cell, he did." "What did you talk about?" "Just stuff. School. Basketball. But he said something weird about how he wishes he could spend more time with me." There was a pause, followed by the sound of kitchen cabinets opening and closing. "Your uncle loves you very much, Lucas. Sometimes family relationships are complicated. Is that why he keeps sending me those expensive gifts?" Dad seemed kind of annoyed about the new gaming laptop, the clink of glasses on the counter. "Your father doesn't understand certain things. Speaking of Raphael, he's been asking about you again, more than usual." Damien's jaw tightened. His brother's excessive interest in Lucas had always struck him as odd, but he had dismissed it as Raphael compensating for not having children of his own. "Mom, why does Uncle Raphael care so much? Sometimes it's like he thinks he's my dad or something." The silence that followed felt heavy, pregnant with unspoken truths. Damien's finger hovered over the recording app's stop button, but something kept it in place. "Sit down, sweetheart," Elena said finally. "There's something we need to discuss, something I've been meaning to tell you for a while." The scrape of kitchen chairs against hardwood flooring echoed in his mind as he pictured them at the breakfast nook, where they had shared countless family meals. "Your Uncle Raphael, he's not just your uncle. Elena's voice caught. "He's your real father." The words hit Damien like a physical blow. His hand gripped his phone tighter, his knuckles white against the black case. But Dad, Damien, your father, he's been good to us. Very good. But there are things you don't know about what happened before you were born. Before I married him." Through the crack in his office door, Damien caught a glimpse of Elena pulling Lucas into a hug. His son, or was he? Lucas looked shell-shocked, his 12-year-old face pale and confused. Lucas pulled away from his mother's embrace, his young face contorted with a mix of confusion and distress. "I don't understand. How could Uncle Raphael be my real dad?" Elena smoothed her perfectly styled hair, a gesture Damien had once found endearing, but now seemed calculated. "It's complicated, sweetie. Before I married your dad, before I married Damien Ford, Raphael and I had something special." In his office, Damien's breathing remained steady and controlled, even as his world tilted on its axis. Years of handling crisis situations had taught him the value of staying calm under pressure. The recording continued, capturing every word. "What do you mean, special?" Lucas's voice cracked slightly. "We were in love, deeply in love. But the timing wasn't right. Raphael was starting his business ventures, traveling constantly. I needed stability, a settled life. And Damien, he could provide that. So you just used that for stability." The hurt in Lucas's voice mirrored the sharp pain in Damien's chest. "No, honey, it wasn't like that. Not entirely." Elena's tone shifted, becoming more defensive. "Your father, Damien, he's a good man, dependable, safe. But Raphael and I, we never stopped loving each other. We just had to be practical." The sound of pacing footsteps echoed through the kitchen. "This doesn't make sense, Mom. If Uncle Raphael is my real dad, why did you marry Dad? Why keep it a secret?" "Because sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions for their future, for their children's future." A chair scraped across the floor again. "Look at me, Lucas. Everything I've done, everything we've done, has been to secure the best life possible for you. Does Dad know?" A bitter laugh escaped Elena's lips. "No, and he can't know. Not yet. The timing still isn't right. Mom, why can't we just tell Dad the truth? He deserves to know." "Sweetie, timing is everything in life. I learned that in real estate, and it applies here too." Elena's voice took on a calculating edge that Damien had never heard before. "We have to be smart about this. Your father, Damien, is nearly paid off the house, and he's promised to cover your private high school tuition." The pieces clicked into place in Damien's mind. The frequent late nights at the office, the suspicious text messages he glimpsed, his brother's increasingly lavish gifts to Lucas. "So what's the plan?" Lucas asked, his voice small. "Raphael and I have it all figured out. Once Damien clears the home loan and sets up your tuition, we'll tell him at Christmas. The divorce settlement will give us everything we need. The house, substantial alimony, child support, and then we can finally be a real family with your true father." Damien's hands trembled slightly as he saved the recording, his mind already racing through the implications. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was calculated, years in the making. "But I don't want a different family, Lucas," he protested. "I love Dad. He's been there for everything. My games, my science fairs. When I was sick." "Hush now." Elena cut him off sharply. "This is adult business. You'll understand when you're older. For now, you need to keep this between us. Can you do that? For me and Uncle Raphael." The next morning, Damien sat in a dimly lit booth at Café Monroe, far from his usual haunts. Across from him, Gabriel Ortiz nursed his third espresso of the day. The private investigator's reputation preceded him, methodical, discreet, and ruthlessly effective. "I need everything," Damien stated, sliding a USB drive across the table. "The recording is just the beginning. I want bank records, phone logs, travel history, anything that connects my wife and my brother over the past 13 years. Gabriel pocketed the drive without a word. "Family cases are messy, Mr. Ford. Are you sure you want to pull this thread? They've been pulling threads behind your back for years." Damien's voice remained steady, but his eyes held a cold determination. "I need to know everything before I make my next move. It'll be expensive. Family cases require delicate handling, especially with a minor involved." "Money isn't an issue." Damien pulled out an envelope. "This is your retainer. I want daily updates, no matter how small the detail." Over the next weeks, Damien maintained a perfect facade at home, while Gabriel's investigation uncovered layer after layer of deception. The PI's reports arrived encrypted, each one more damning than the last. "Look at this," Gabriel said during one of their clandestine meetings, spreading photos across the table. "Dorian Blake minus 12 years ago, 3 weeks before your wedding. The images show Elena and Raphael at a private resort, looking very much like honeymooners. Damien's stomach churned at the sight of his brother kissing his soon-to-be wife by a private pool. There's a paper trail, too, Gabriel continued, pulling out financial records showing regular transfers from Raphael to an offshore account in Alina's name. Transfers that started right after Lucas was born. Monthly deposits increasing over time. Damien studied the bank statements, his security background helping him trace the complex web of transactions. They've been planning this for years. That's not all, Gabriel added, pulling up property records on his tablet. Your brother purchased a cabin 6 months ago through an LLC registered in the Emerald Isles. Guess who's been meeting him there twice a month? Security camera footage showed Alina's Mercedes at the cabin's gates, with timestamps corresponding to her late nights at the office. What about Lucas? Damien asked, his voice softening slightly. Any indication they've told him anything else? The kid is scared and confused. He's been spending more time at the school library and avoiding home. His teachers have noticed a drop in his usual enthusiasm. Gabriel hesitated. There's something else you should know. I did some digging into Alina's past, specifically around the time of Lucas's conception. Damien looked up sharply. What did you find? There was another man in the picture. Dorian Blake, Alina's college boyfriend. He was in town during the relevant time frame, about a month before she started seeing your brother. Dorian Blake. Damien echoed. The name stirred a vague memory. Wasn't he killed in a car accident 10 years ago, on a highway collision outside of Portsville? Gabriel pushed forward another document. Mr. Ford, have you considered the possibility that neither you nor your brother might be Lucas's biological father? Damien stared at the document, his mind racing through the implications. I need you to get DNA samples. Discreetly. From all of us. Already ahead of you. Gabriel tapped his tablet. I've made arrangements with a situated on the 42nd floor of Crystal Tower. Persian rugs softened the marble floors while antique military maps adorned the walls. Remnants of his and Damien's shared past in Army intelligence. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows as Damien watched his friend of 15 years review Gabriel's evidence. Your brother's gotten sloppy, Owen noted, examining bank statements showing transfers to Alina's hidden account, using shell companies registered in his girlfriend Jasmine Lee's name. Amateur hour. Damien raised an eyebrow. Girlfriend. Jasmine Lee -26. Personal trainer. She thinks Raphael's divorcing his wife. Owen slid across a surveillance photo showing Raphael with a young Asian woman outside an upscale restaurant. Your brother's building quite the house of cards. Alina knows. Damien replied. Doesn't look like it. She still thinks she's the only one. Owen's fingers drummed against his desk, a tell from their poker nights. The good news. We can protect your assets. The bad news. Your brother's involvement complicates things. Through the window, Damien watched the city transition into dusk, lights flickering on and surrounding buildings like stars emerging. I want Lucas protected. He's innocent in all this. We can create a trust, Owen suggested, pulling up documents on his curved monitor. Put the house and investments in it. Make Lucas the beneficiary. They can't touch it in a divorce. But there's more we can do, Owen continued, outlining an intricate legal strategy that would not only protect Lucas's future, but potentially expose Alina and Raphael's broader financial misconduct. Through our investigation, we discovered Raphael had been using his real estate ventures with Alina to launder money from questionable overseas investments. Your brother's been playing both sides, Owen explained. The SEC is already sniffing around his latest development project. One anonymous tip about Alina's involvement in the documentation. She's been notarizing fraudulent papers. Damien remembered the late nights Alina spent catching up on paperwork at her office. Exactly. The trust protects Lucas. The threat of a federal investigation keeps them from fighting it. Owen's smile was predatory. They're expecting a simple divorce. They have no idea what's really coming. For the next 2 hours, They constructed a legal fortress around Lucas's future. The trust would cover not only the house and investments but also provide for his education through graduate school. Special provisions ensured neither Elena nor Raphael could access the funds, even as guardians. "What about custody?" Damien asked, his voice tight. "Given Lucas's age, the court will consider his preference, but we've got leverage." Owen pulled out another file. "Remember Miranda Price? Elena's former assistant, the one she fired last year. She's willing to testify about Elena's inappropriate relationships with clients. It seems your wife has been mixing business with pleasure beyond just Raphael." The revelation should have hurt, but Damien felt only cold satisfaction. Every new piece of evidence was another nail in the coffin of Elena's planned Christmas performance. "Document everything," Owen advised. "Every conversation, every interaction. We'll need a clean timeline when this goes to court." "And Raphael's girlfriend? Leave Ms. Chung to me. She's already suspicious about Raphael's excuses." One anonymous email with proof of his meetings with Elena. Damien nodded, appreciating the elegance of Owen's strategy. Let their own deceptions become their undoing. The following months unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. While Elena and Raphael plotted their Christmas revelation, Damien orchestrated his counter-strategy with military precision. Each move was calculated, each interaction scripted to maintain their false sense of security. CyberShield Innovations provided the perfect cover. Damien scheduled business trips that coincidentally overlapped with Elena's meetings with Raphael, gathering evidence while appearing completely unaware. His security background proved invaluable as he documented their patterns, their lies, their growing carelessness. One crisp November morning, Damien sat in his parked car outside a mountain cabin, watching Elena's Mercedes disappear down the private road. Once she was gone, he approached the property, his security expertise making quick work of the basic alarm system. Inside, evidence of their betrayal was everywhere. Photos, letters, plans for their post-divorce life together. But it was the laptop left carelessly on the kitchen counter that proved most valuable. Elena had forgotten to log out of her email. That evening, during another tense family dinner, Damien watched them perform their usual roles while encryption software quietly copied every incriminating document from Elena's phone to his secure server. Lucas's science project won first prize. Raphael announced, playing the proud uncle. "Have you considered Regent Academy for high school? Their STEM program is outstanding. It's quite exclusive." Elena added, shooting Damien a meaningful look. "But Lucas deserves the best education possible, doesn't he, dear?" "Of course." Damien took a measured sip of water. "Nothing but the best for our son." Later, after Lucas had gone to bed, Elena lingered in the kitchen. "I was thinking we should host Christmas this year. Make it really special." "Special how?" Damien asked, noting how she unconsciously touched the necklace Raphael had given her. A tell she didn't realize she had. "Just special, the whole family together." One last time. The irony almost made him laugh. Instead, he smiled wryly. "Whatever you want, dear, it's your show." Meanwhile, the trust took shape behind the scenes. The house, investments, and his controlling interest in cyber art innovations were gradually transferred into Lucas's name. Sierra Reed's legal expertise ensured every transaction was ironclad, while leaving just enough in joint accounts to avoid suspicion. "The paperwork's ready," Sierra reported during one of their secure video calls. "The trust is established with you as trustee until Lucas turns 25. We've also set up a separate foundation for his education, completely insulated from any divorce proceedings. The hardest part wasn't the legal maneuvering or asset transfers. It was maintaining normalcy with Lucas. The boy was struggling under the weight of his mother's secret. His grades were slipping slightly. His usual enthusiasm dimmed. One Saturday, after a particularly tense family breakfast, Damien took Lucas fishing, their traditional father-son activity since Lucas was 6. "Dad," Lucas asked as they sat in their usual spot by the lake, Do you ever wish things were different? Damien caught the tremor in his son's voice. Different how? Just different. Like maybe if you had a different family or a different son. Lucas, look at me. Damien turned to face the boy who had captured his heart 12 years ago. Family isn't about what we're born into. It's about the choices we make every day. And I choose you, always. The boy's eyes welled with tears. Even if what? Damien kept his voice gentle, though he knew exactly what Lucas was struggling to say. Nothing. Just, thanks, Dad. December arrived with a bitter cold snap and an unexpected revelation. The DNA test results delivered to Damien's private mailbox confirmed what Gabriel's investigation had suggested. Lucas wasn't his biological son, but here comes the twist. He wasn't Raphael's either. Dorian Blake. Gabriel explained during their meeting at Cafe Monroe. Alina's college sweetheart. He was in town during the conception window, staying at the Grand Harbor. Adjacent rooms for 3 nights. Damien studied the hotel records, his mind racing. The timing fit. But Blake had died years ago in a car accident outside of Portsville -10 years ago this month. Gabriel pushed forward another file. Here's where it gets interesting. Blake knew. What? Damien asked, incredulous. Found his old emails. He confronted Alina right before the accident. Threatened to tell you everything. Gabriel's expression was grim. The crash report noted brake failure, a recently serviced car, an experienced driver, and clear weather. The implication hung heavy in the air. Alina. No proof yet, but Raphael's company handled Blake's life insurance policy. Standard procedure became complicated. Payment delayed for months until Alina provided additional documentation. The pieces clicked into place with terrible clarity. Alina hadn't just betrayed you. She'd orchestrated a complex web of deception spanning years, possibly including Blake's death. And Raphael, blinded by his own arrogance, actually believed he was Lucas's father. Does Raphael know about Blake? No evidence he does. He's been making plans, private school tours, college savings accounts, all while using your money, of course. Damien absorbed this information with the detachment his military training had taught him. The trust is secure. Even if the truth about Blake comes out, Lucas's future is protected. That evening, Damien sat in his home office, reviewing the final pieces of his counter-strategy. The DNA results, the trust documents, the evidence of Alina and Raphael's financial fraud. Everything was ready for their Christmas surprise. Through his partially open door, he heard Alina on the phone, presumably with Raphael. Everything's arranged, she whispered. Christmas Eve will be perfect. Damien wouldn't know what hit him. He smiled coldly at her choice of words. Let them plan their perfect moment. Let them think they hold all the cards. The truth will be my Christmas gift to them all. A truth far more devastating than they could imagine. As he encrypted the final documents, Damien thought about Lucas, about choices and consequences. Biology hadn't been there for 12 years of Little League games and science projects. DNA hadn't taught Lucas to ride a bike, or helped him overcome his fear of thunderstorms. Love, he had learned, was about choices. And he had made his. Christmas was coming. Alina and Raphael thought they were the architects of destruction. But they had no idea that their perfectly planned revelation would become their own undoing. The truth about Dorian Blake was just one card in Damien's hand, a hand he had spent months carefully assembling. Let them have their moment, he thought, listening to Alina laugh softly into her phone. Let them think they've won. The real gift will be watching their house of cards collapse, knowing that Lucas is safely beyond their reach. The end game was approaching, and Damien was ready, though not for revenge. Revenge was too simple, too emotional. No, this was about justice, about protecting what mattered most. Christmas would indeed be special this year, just not in the way Alina and Raphael had planned. As December's chills settled over the city, Damien intensified his time with Lucas. The boy's recent knowledge of his mother's deception weighed heavily on him, visible in the slight slump of his shoulders and the shadows under his eyes. Rather than let Alina and Raphael's machinations poison these precious days, Damien planned a series of father-son activities that would cement their bond regardless of what Christmas might bring. Their first adventure took them to Mount Aspen for a weekend camping trip. As they set up their tent in the crisp mountain air, Damien watched Lucas methodically securing the guy lines, a skill he had taught him during their first camping trip 4 years ago. "Do you remember the knot I showed you?" Damien asked, testing the tension on one line. "Double figure 8, Lucas replied, demonstrating the technique perfectly. "Because it won't slip in the wind." "That's right. Always secure your foundations first." The deeper meaning wasn't lost on Lucas. He paused, hands still on the rope. "Dad, can we talk about something?" They sat on a fallen log, overlooking the valley, the setting sun painting the snow-capped peaks in shades of gold and purple. Lucas pulled his knees to his chest, making himself smaller, a gesture that reminded Damien of the frightened 6-year-old who had once crawled into his bed during a thunderstorm. "Mom thinks, she says that after Christmas, everything's going to change." Damien turned to face his son directly. "What do you think about that?" "I don't want things to change." Lucas's voice cracked slightly. "She keeps talking about how Uncle Raphael will be more involved, how we'll be a real family. But I already have a real family. I have you." "Lucas, look at me." Damien waited until the boy met his eyes. "There are 2 kinds of family in this world. The kind we're born into, and the kind we choose. Sometimes they're the same. Sometimes they're different. But the choices we make are what really matter." "But what if?" Lucas hesitated, tears threatening. "What if I'm not who you thought I was?" "You're my son," Damien stated firmly. "That's not about blood or DNA or anything else. It's about every moment we've shared, every lesson learned, every challenge faced together. Nothing can change that. Not your mother, not Uncle Raphael, not anyone. You promise?" "I promise. And you know what I always say about promises. They're contracts with our honor." Lucas finished with a small smile breaking through his worry. The following week, they attended Lucas's basketball tournament. The boy had inherited his athletic ability from someone. Another mystery Elena had woven into her web of lies. But his competitive spirit, his strategic thinking on the court, had been nurtured through countless backyard practice sessions with Damien. From the bleachers, Damien watched Lucas execute a perfect pick-and-roll play they had practiced for hours. Elena sat several rows away, pretending to film the game while actually texting Raphael. Her carefully crafted mask of maternal pride slipped whenever Lucas glanced her way, revealing the calculation beneath. After the game, which Lucas's team won handily, they stopped for ice cream at their favorite shop. While Lucas savored his triple chocolate sundae, Damien noticed him watching a father and son at another table, the man teaching his boy how to solve a Rubik's Cube. "Dad," Lucas's voice was thoughtful, "will you always love me?" The question hit Damien like a physical blow, not for its content, but for the fear behind it. He set down his spoon, giving the moment the weight it deserved. "Always," he replied, his voice firm with conviction. "Family isn't just about blood. It's about choice. And I chose you 12 years ago. Nothing will ever change that." Christmas Eve dawned with a blanket of fresh snow, transforming the neighborhood into a winter wonderland. Elena had spent weeks orchestrating her perfect setting, turning their home into a showcase of holiday perfection. Crystal snowflakes hung from the chandelier, professional garlands wrapped the staircase, and the massive Christmas tree dominated the living room, its white and gold ornaments carefully curated to match her theme. "Everything has to be perfect," she instructed the catering staff, her voice sharp with barely contained excitement. "This is a very special occasion." Damien watched from his study as she directed traffic, noting how her hand kept drifting to her phone, probably texting updates to Raphael. She had chosen everyone's outfits, insisted on a professional photographer, even hired a string quartet for ambience, her attention to detail, and her plan to dismantle their family from within was almost admirable. The guests began arriving at 6. First came Beatrice Miller and Kenneth, Damien's parents, who had no idea that their Christmas celebration would become a battlefield. Beatrice immediately gravitated to Lucas, pulling him into a warm embrace, while Kenneth clapped Damien on the shoulder. "Something's different about Alina," Beatrice murmured to Damien as they watched his wife direct the catering staff. "She seems eager. It's a special night." "She's been planning it for months," Damien replied evenly. Raphael arrived fashionably late, his entrance carefully timed to coincide with the first round of champagne. His smile dripped with smug satisfaction as he handed Lucas an elaborately wrapped gift. "For my favorite nephew," he announced loudly, shooting Damien a look of barely concealed triumph. "Only the best for our boy." Alina fluttered nearby, her designer dress catching the light as she supervised the photographer's angles. "Raphael, you shouldn't have," she said, though her tone was measured. Although Lucas deserved to be spoiled by his family, the slip was subtle, but Damien caught the faint frown on Alina's face. Beatrice had always been perceptive. Her years as a family court judge had honed her ability to spot deception. She touched Damien's arm gently. "Is everything all right, son?" "It will be," he assured her, patting the envelope in his pocket. "Just wait for the gift exchange." More relatives arrived, cousins, aunts, uncles, all unwitting audience members to Alina's performance. She had positioned everything perfectly: the seating arrangements, the timing of dinner, the moment she would shatter their family's foundations. While Alina basked in her imagined triumph, Damien quietly placed his envelope on the tree, securing it with a golden ribbon that matched her carefully chosen decorations. The irony of using her own aesthetic choices to deliver her downfall wasn't lost on him. Lucas watched the proceedings with growing anxiety, his young shoulders tense under the weight of secrets. During a quiet moment, he found Damien in the kitchen. "Dad, I don't feel good about this." "I know, son," Damien squeezed his shoulder gently. "But sometimes the truth needs to come out. Just remember what I said about choices and promises." The moment Alina had orchestrated for months finally arrived. The family gathered around the tree, champagne glasses in hand, with the string quartet providing sophisticated background music. Alina stood with practiced grace, her expression a masterpiece of false sincerity. "I have an announcement," she began, sharing a knowing look with Raphael. "Actually," Damien interrupted smoothly, "I have a gift for everyone first." The slight falter in Alina's smile was worth every second of planning. Damien retrieved the envelope, performing his own choreography with the same precision she had applied to her decorations. Poppies were distributed to Alina, Raphael, and Lucas, each sealed with that matching golden ribbon. "What's this?" Raphael's arrogance slipped slightly as he opened the envelope. Damien watched their faces as they processed the contents. DNA test results, trust documents securing the house and investments in Lucas's name, evidence of their affair, and coup de grace, proof of Dorian Blake's paternity. "Merry Christmas," Damien said softly, his voice carrying in the sudden silence. "Lucas, the house and your education are secured in a trust. No one can take them from you." Alina's champagne glass slipped from nervous fingers, shattering on the professionally polished hardwood floor. The sound matched the breaking of her carefully constructed plans. "Alina, Raphael, you should know that Lucas isn't either of ours biologically. He's Dorian Blake's son." A collective gasp arose. Beatrice's soft exclamation, her judicial mind probably already calculating the legal implications. Kenneth's face darkened with understanding and fury. But it was Lucas's expression, a mix of fear, relief, and desperate hope, that mattered most. "This is ridiculous," Alina sputtered, her mask cracking. "You can't possibly." "The trust is ironclad," Damien continued calmly. "Everything is in Lucas's name, properly structured, and legally binding. There's also a copy of the divorce papers. Don't worry about taking everything. I've already given it all to the person who deserves it. Raphael lunged forward, his face purple with rage. You had no right. I had every right. Damien cut him off coldly. Brother. The weight of betrayal in that single word stopped Raphael cold. Around them, family members began to understand the scope of what was unfolding. Shocked whispers and accusations filled the air. Damien turned to Lucas, who stood trembling yet upright, stronger than any 12-year-old should need to be. He pulled his son into a tight embrace. I love you, son, he whispered fiercely. Remember our promise. Then, with the same quiet dignity that had characterized his entire response to their betrayal, Damien walked out into the snowy night. Behind him, he heard Elena's carefully orchestrated evening dissolve into chaos. Her dream of triumph transformed into a nightmare of exposure. 1 year later, the dust had settled into new patterns. Lucas lived in the house with his guardian, Sierra Reed, thriving under her care and free from Elena's manipulations. The trust ensured his education and security, while weekly video calls and regular visits kept his bond with Damien strong. Elena and Raphael's relationship. But the real victory wasn't in the trust documents or the exposed lies. It was in the quiet moments. Helping Lucas with homework over video chat, attending his basketball games, watching him grow into a young man who understood that true family transcends biology. Lucas would later say that Christmas was when he learned the true meaning of fatherhood, not in the DNA results that shattered his world, but in the love of a man who chose to be his father even after learning he wasn't. The trust protected his future, but Damien's love had saved his present, teaching him that the strongest bonds aren't forged by blood, but by choice. The Christmas tree envelope had delivered justice, but Damien's true victory wasn't in exposing their betrayal. It was in rising above it, choosing love over bitterness, and protecting the one innocent person in this tragic story. In the end, he had given Lucas the greatest gift possible, the knowledge that he was wanted, chosen, and loved, not out of obligation or biology, but because of who he was. Epilogue 10 years later. The autumn breeze rustled through the maple trees lining Regent Academy's campus as 22-year-old Lucas Ford adjusted his graduation cap. A decade had passed since that fateful Christmas Eve, and life had taken unexpected turns for everyone involved. Lucas stood as valedictorian of Regent Academy's medical school, his academic achievements a testament to both his dedication and the trust that had secured his future. Beside him, Damien beamed with pride, his hair now touched with distinguished gray at the temples. Though they lived in different cities, their bond had only strengthened over the years. I never doubted you'd make it, Damien said, straightening Lucas's tie, a gesture that had become their tradition since Lucas's high school graduation. Couldn't have done it without you, Dad. Lucas replied, his voice carrying the same warmth it had when he was 12, though now deeper. Remember when you helped me with my first biology assignment? Who knew it would lead to medical school? The years had been kind to Damien. After relocating to Evergreen City, he had transformed CyberShield Innovations into a cybersecurity empire, specializing in protecting medical institutions, inspired by Lucas's career choice. He had remarried 5 years ago to Clara Bennett, a pediatric surgeon who shared his values about chosen family. Their blended household included her daughter, Ava, now 13, who adored her stepbrother Lucas. The same couldn't be said for Elena Hansen. The implosion of her carefully orchestrated plans had triggered a spectacular downfall. The investigation into her fraudulent real estate dealings, triggered by evidence Damien had quietly provided to authorities, had resulted in a suspended license and hefty fines. Her attempt to contest the trust had backfired spectacularly when Owen Sinclair presented evidence of her broader financial misconduct. Did you hear about Mom? Lucas asked as they walked across campus, his tone sardonic. She tried reaching out again last month, through her new lawyer, on Instagram, actually, and now she's selling wellness products, one of those multi-level marketing schemes. Lucas's tone carried neither bitterness nor pity, just factual observation. She's living in Arizona with husband number 4. Still claims she did everything for my own good. Alina's post-divorce life had become a cautionary tale in their social circle. After her real estate career imploded, she had cycled through 3 marriages, each shorter than the last. Her attempts to rebuild her reputation in various cities had consistently crumbled when her past caught up with her. The truth about Dorian Blake had become public knowledge, destroying her carefully crafted image of victimhood. Rafael Francis had fared even worse. The SEC investigation into his business dealings, prompted by irregularities discovered during the divorce proceedings, had uncovered a web of fraud extending far beyond his affair with Alina. His girlfriend, Jasmine Lee, had turned state's evidence, revealing how he had used the relationship to hide assets and launder money. Uncle Raphael even sent a card from federal prison. Lucas mentioned, his tone laced with irony, still has 2 years left on his sentence. Damien nodded, unsurprised. And he's still claiming he had no idea about Dorian Blake. Yeah, Lucas replied, though he did finally admit that his whole devoted uncle act was just spiteful. Prison gives people time to reflect, Damien commented. The investigation revealed the full extent of Raphael's vindictiveness. His interest in you was never paternal. It was purely about hurting his more successful brother. The discovery that he wasn't your father shattered his ego more than losing his freedom. Aunt Sierra Reed, who had stepped up as Lucas's guardian after that Christmas, now ran a successful youth counseling center. Her experience helping Lucas navigate the aftermath of family deception had inspired her to assist other children dealing with parental betrayal. She had become a frequent speaker at family therapy conferences, sharing their story as an example of how love and honesty could overcome betrayal. Grandma Beatrice is in the audience, Lucas said, spotting the former judge in the graduation crowd. She's still angry at Mom, you know. She says Alina's actions cheapened everything she fought for in family court. Beatrice Miller had retired from the bench, but remained active in family law reform, using the Ford case as an example of why trust law needed strengthening. She and Kenneth had become vocal advocates for children's rights in custody cases, their personal experience lending weight to their arguments. The graduation ceremony itself was a testament to how life had evolved. In the audience were Sierra, Ava, along with his grandparents, and Owen Sinclair attended with his wife, their friendship with Damien having deepened into true family bonds. Even Gabriel Ortiz, the PI whose investigation had uncovered the truth, had become a regular at family gatherings. After the ceremony, as they gathered for photos, Lucas pulled Damien aside. You know what I realized today? That Christmas wasn't just about exposing their lies. It was about teaching me what real love looks like. How so? Damien asked gently. Mom and Uncle Raphael thought love was about possession, about having control, about keeping secrets. But you showed me it's about choices, about choosing to love, to protect, to be honest, even when it hurts. The wisdom in Lucas's words reflected the man he had become, compassionate yet clear-eyed, shaped by adversity, but not hardened by it. His choice to pursue medicine, specializing in genetic counseling, was partly influenced by his own story. He wanted to help other families navigate the complex intersection of biology and belonging. Their extended family had gathered at Damien and Clara's home in Evergreen City that evening, celebrating not just Lucas's graduation, but the journey that had brought them here. The house rang with laughter, conversations, and the kind of genuine warmth that Alina's perfectly orchestrated Christmas Eve had tried, and failed, to fake. In the kitchen, Clara organized the catering with the easy efficiency of someone used to managing operating rooms, while Ava proudly showed Lucas her science project, carrying on the tradition of siblings helping siblings. Aunt Sierra discussed her latest counseling techniques with Beatrice, while Kenneth and Owen debated recent changes in family law. Watching them, Damien reflected on how tragedy had ultimately strengthened their true family bonds, while exposing the false ones. Alina and Raphael's betrayal had been intended to destroy, but instead had cleared the way for something more authentic to grow. Lucas's phone buzzed. Another message from Elena. This one claimed she had found herself through essential oils and wanted to make amends. He showed it to Damien with a slight smile before deleting it unread. Some people never learn, do they? Lucas observed. They learn the wrong lessons. Damien corrected softly. They think love is about what you can take. They never understand it's about what you choose to give. The evening wound down with toasts and stories. Each person was representing a choice, to create family through love rather than obligation. Clara's daughter Ava had started calling Lucas Big Brother without any prompting, proving that their relationship was as real as any biological bond. As guests departed, Lucas lingered in his old room, now converted to a study, but still holding photos from his childhood, camping trips, basketball games, and science fairs. Every image captured moments of choice, of love freely given and returned. 10 years, Lucas mused, looking at a photo from that last Christmas Eve. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if they'd succeeded with their plan. They never could have, Damien replied confidently. Their plan was built on lies. Truth doesn't always win quickly, but it wins eventually. The proof is in the lives we've built. While Elena drifted between failed marriages and pyramid schemes, while Raphael counted days in federal prison, our chosen family had flourished. Lucas's medical career, Clara and Ava's addition to our lives, Aunt Sierra's counseling work, and the strength of the bonds with our grandparents and friends all testified to the power of choosing love over deception. The scandal had faded from society gossip, but its lessons remained. In legal circles, the Ford case was cited in trust law reforms. In family therapy, our story helped other families understand that biology is just one way to create kinship. And in our own lives, it stood as a reminder that the strongest bonds aren't inherited. They are chosen. As the evergreen city skyline twinkled beyond the window, father and son stood together, a living rebuke to those who thought family could be reduced to DNA or divorce settlements. The trust had secured Lucas's education, but Damien's love had secured his future in ways no legal document could measure. The Christmas tree envelope had delivered justice a decade ago, but the real gift had been the truth it revealed. That love, when chosen freely and given honestly, could survive any betrayal and build something stronger from the ashes of deception.